Transmitting. Very excited to be with you. So excited to be back with Annette. I'm just beaming. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you, Annette. I just want to share we are here for Ascension in the Raw, episode 9, and we're going to be talking about twin flames today. And I just wanted to throw a few things out there before we jump in, because I'm really excited to hear what Annette, like the direction, like what she's seeing, what she's sharing. But I want to share a few things when I think of this topic, because it opens up a very big topic when we're talking about concepts and programs. So I want to share some phrases as I've been exploring, mental prisons or programs, like looking at these symbols of imprisonment in our mind and our concepts, definitions of stuff. So some of these words I want to share: conceptual confines, like where are we confined by a concept inside, separated from something bigger, something grander, something expanded. This really older word, manacles, manacles of the mind. And that came because universe was showing me different ways of saying the word mind in different languages. It looks like mana, and then the word manacles, and it's like, wow, so the word for essentially a handcuff or some kind of a confining, holding your limbs together is similar to one of the ways of saying mind. Interesting. Okay, mind shackles. Okay. Being aware of locked in definitions slash programs. Ultimately, we're talking about programs. And that the intent with what we're discussing today is to assist you to deprogram, to assist you to expand what it all can be. Keep opening and to be more fluid with our creations and with our mind and our concepts. So with that, let us dive in to twin flames. Annette, please.
It's funny when you said monocles, I was thinking barnacles. As soon as you said that, I was like, barnacles. And you said monocles. I'm like, I don't know if I know what that means, but I know barnacles, but it's still very constricting, and that's probably a good way to start the topic of twin flames, because they are also can be very constricting. So I don't know how you want to structure it. I know when I look at the topic, and when I first was introduced to the topic, and we all get introduced to the topic, to me, when you are in a very challenging relationship and you're trying to describe it, right? You're trying to figure out why it didn't work, or why it kind of feels miserable, or why you really are drawn to a person that might be married, or they might be in another relationship, or they might have something else going on, but you're still like, wow, I'm super attracted to that person. I don't know why. And that's normally when people get into twin flames. It is not any topic anyone has any interest in until some shit goes haywire with the relationship. And then everyone's like, well, what is that? Because we're looking for a reason as to why it's not working out. Why is it a mess? Why is it not what I thought it was going to be? So I think today we're going to probably focus more on the romantic relationships when it comes to twins. And we're not going to focus so much on, like, technically everyone is a twin. Everyone in your life is a twin. The mailman is technically a twin in an aspect of you. So I don't want you to think that, there's just one, because that's not true. There's always more than one. There's never one. If you think there's just one, you're just getting started, because there's more than one. And once we get done with one, we get a new one normally. And that's how it goes for a while, because we train new energy signature, and it gets activated. And then we get someone to match that one for us. So it is always a challenge when we get into the topic, because it also has gotten to be, a lot of people say it has its own little matrix, because it has the runner, the chaser, all the lore around twins, and when you try to really deconstruct that, which hopefully that's what we're going to do today. If we can kind of get to it. I think we'll be able to get to that today. We're going to deconstruct it as much as possible to kind of get rid of that, because the constructs of just what people think they are and the reality of what they're for are kind of two separate things. They're not here to be the love of your life. Yeah, even if you think you have 6 of them, none of them are here to be the love of your life. They're here to get you to a different place internally. And I'm going to throw it back to you for you to kind of keep going down what you want to you bring to today with it, and then we can just go back and forth.
Thank you for talking about some of the energy dynamics. It's awesome. So I took some little notes when you were sharing about that. So like the narcissist empath kind of ping-ponging, that's something you want to be aware of with everything. These are so huge. They're really ingrained, socially. It's very interesting. So narcissist empath dynamics to explore, the runner chaser, like you mentioned, and also the giver taker. So you see how all of these are separated, like one does one does the other, right? So I want to just start off the bat here that when I feel into the concepts that come forth for me with twin flames are aspects of self that in a separated way of looking at our reality, the human way, that your twin flame is something outside of you or something that got ripped off or separated from you. And how I have always felt about it was that that was the biggest fucking psyop of all time. So we may unintentionally, by shedding light, piss off a lot of egos today. But it actually is quite upsetting and disrespectful to see the amount of money and industry. You're getting a little cynical here because you want to follow the dollars. With the whole twin flame thing, it's a very powerful product. It's very important to be aware of that. So I think it's the biggest psyop of all time, and that it's actually, I'm going to bring in some Gnosticism and like some of the more ancient, like kind of theosophical ways of perceiving reality that are multidimensional, which is that we are the twin flames. The twin flame is not another human outside of you. It's your soul or your higher self aspect that you are yearning for, seeking for. Another word is, you could say, your connection, feeling your love, right? So that's a way to just super simplify the concept here. So when we talk about the Gnostic traditions, and this is the holistic Gnostic that was very balanced between sacred feminine and sacred masculine, not what came later, which was imbalanced. But there's a concept of hieros gamos. And when we study occult and metaphysics, all of this kind of interesting mystery school stuff and like temple traditions kind of stuff, the hieros gamos was the initiate, the individual, the person in their training is looking to unify with themselves. So I just look at all of us as, okay, we're in a human form, we're in a male or a female form, but we each, and this is where I'm going to get into a little energetic anatomy with the chakras and the systems from ancient India. We have the spinal column called the Shushumna, and then you have two snakes going back and forth. It also looks like the caduceus. That's where the symbol for medicine originally came from, the caduceus. You have two snakes intertwining around that central column of light, a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect. So regardless of our body, we have both of those forces within, and we are to unify those forces within. Some ways to break that down would be receiving and giving, or inhaling and exhaling, active and passive, right? At rest and taking action. So these are kind of the polarities of doing and being, which are represented by these forces of creation and also elements. So for me, it's the most superficial way for us to be fed what twin flames are, when it's actually a very deep reunion with yourself. Heroes Gamos, holy union, reunion, I remember union. So that's what it is it's unifying your higher self, is that you are unified in your perception. You're not separated off. You're free, you're sovereign, you're empowered. So yeah, I will pause with that because obviously we go all over the place. Thank you, Annette.
Yeah, the cat wanted to keep coming back in and going back out, and I'm like, you need to go in, dude, or you need to you need to come back in, you need to go back out. It's funny when you were talking, and it's like love and money, baby, and that's what sells. That's what sells. Everyone wants to how to make $1 million in 5 minutes, or how to attract $1 million in 5 minutes, and everyone wants to know, how do I attract the one? Because we feel so separate from ourselves that we are looking for the one. I remember I got an activation from Lisa Transcendence Brown about bringing in your soulmate, right? Or no, that's not what it was about. It was about a twin flame. What was that thing called? It was Divine Soul Union. But I thought it was to bring in your twin flame. I did that thing, like, I know 700 times. I know I did it that many times. And the funny thing is, by the time you get to the certain place with it, you realize you don't need that because you found the place within yourself. And that was the whole point. But when you're doing it, you don't realize that. So the bait and switch your universe does for you, when you're talking about the twin flames. But there's so much money around the subject. There's a lot of disinformation around the subject because it's more romantic if we think we only have one. It's more romantic if it's like, no one likes to watch, even if you're looking at like TV, no one wants to watch a show and everyone's just happy and everything's great. They like the passionate, tumultuous relationships. That's what in the old days, everyone watched Cheers because of Sam and Diane, and they were always they were always like back and forth, and there's zillions of couples throughout TV history, movie history that were back and forth, and people want to watch it for that. They want to see it for that. And you really start to look at your life and you look back on different people. And like I said, we're going to do it today just on romantic. But your friends are twin flames. Your parents are technically twin flame. Everyone is a twin of you in some capacity. It's just, to me, another way to say a different aspect of you. But the romantic ones, usually because they come with either they came with a sexual component, or it could have become a sexual component and maybe just never went that far. There's just a lot of lore around it because it transcends all the human stuff. Either we're attracted to people we normally wouldn't be attracted to. We're attracted to people who are married, they're in a relationship. There's a lot of reasons why we should not be, because our soul doesn't care about all that human kind of stuff. Our soul doesn't care about they're married. Those are human contracts. Our soul doesn't care about that kind of stuff. Our soul is looking for what's the way to get us to a different place inside. What's the way to activate you to something else? Get to a place where you can't get to on your own. And whether that's to bring up happiness, whether it's to bring up bliss, whether it's to bring up anger. If we can't get to it ourselves, our universe is going to send in somebody else. And we agree for that person to come in. These are all soul agreements made ahead of time. These persons are going to come in and do this, right? They're going to come in and do this thing, and they're going to activate us. And then either you're going to live happily ever after, which many times that's not what happens. And most of the time people don't marry. If you leave and they look back and go, maybe they wouldn't say everyone they ever loved was a twin, even though I would say everyone is. But we're going to put that on the shelf for a minute just to explain, technically, yes, everyone's a twin. But if we put that on the shelf and say, okay, if you go back in your life and see there's some people that just felt a little bit more, they got special treatment, and twins get special treatment. They get away with more. They can treat us worse. They can just do stuff that other people, we would not allow that type of treatment, because there's something about them. There's something that they're showing us about ourselves. And once we get to the part about ourselves they're showing us, they tend to not have the pull anymore, because we've transcended that part of us that they were trying to show us, whether it be a good place, or if we want to even polarize it into something that we might not look at as positive, like anger, fear, guilt, jealousy, obsession. Those are huge things, especially obsession and jealousy. Those are huge things with the twins bring out, because we get so wrapped up in them that even being without them, we don't even know how to do that. We don't even know how to even go through that process, because it's there's such a strong pull for us. And some people you can look back and look where, like, all of mine look the same. They were all athletes. They were all like 6'4", 6'5", and it was just like you could pick them out. I would know which one was mine by when they came in. I was like, that one's mine. Just comes out right here. I knew it. I don't even have to. A lot of times we'll have them look the same, and that's when it comes to that thing that people would get into it years ago. You have a type. You like blondes, you like brunettes, you like tall, you like short, you like thin, you like whatever. And you would kind of package them all the same way for a while, right? And they all kind of look the same. Mine were always younger than I was, pretty vastly, younger than I was. Now, the last one I went through was older than I was, which was kind of different for me, but it was a different, probably because I was going through that one consciously, or trying to stay conscious going through it. But when you go through these things unconsciously, you just get so wrapped up in the ride that it's not going the Disney princess way, and you don't know why. Why can't it work? Why doesn't it work out? Why is it it's like it's not meant to be? Because it's not there for those outside things we think they're there for. So I'm going to kick it back to you, and you can explore that or go a different direction.
So good, so good. And I'm laughing about the unconscious phases and like the cougar phase. Like, I'm laughing about it because it's all part of the journey, everybody. Like, this is, we're learning, right? We're growing.
I didn't say cougar. You said
I know.
they weren't that much younger than me.
I know.
My God.
I just had to, like, we gotta laugh, guys. Like, the journey is intensifying. We gotta have fun with it, and smile and learn. So, partnerships, romantic partnerships, the twin flames. It's for learning. It's for evolving. So I love what Annette was saying, because that's what I see it as, is when we have these encounters, part of the reflection is so strong of certain elements here. There's these activations, there's triggerings happening, there's cellular or genetic memory, DNA unlocking. We have to learn more about ourselves through the others to a point. And there will be elements that we agree to come together to unlock in one another, that it's a very unique configuration and it is sacred. So while I'm kind of being like sarcastic and like a little bit of a smartass with some of this stuff, because it's aggravating to me to observe, again, products, like things being marketed to people where they're very superficial. Like, I guess I could say superficiality annoys me in this phase that I'm in right now of looking at everything. But this is about doing the work together. And when you start to look at your life as a stream and the souls that come in, starting to look at this from a really expanded understanding, that we all agree to connect at different times to activate each other, and that there are phases of this. So, like a nice way is like a reason, a season, or a lifetime. It could be unique situations where you are partnered for a lifetime. That can happen for sure. But when it's sold and marketed as a dream, as a Disney concept, as a package, we could really go to post World War II with this, the Pluto and Leo energy, which we're in the opposite of Pluto and Leo. We're in Pluto and Aquarius now, by the way. So it just shows you the contrast here. But packaging, the white picket fence, and all these, it's all very programmed, it's all very cookie cutter concept of a mate and what it was about, right? It's very interesting. And you can see that humanity is breaking it down right now as they're squabbling over all kinds of stuff, like gender roles and all these things that they're learning. They're finding out, oh, we're all actually both. And that one doesn't have it all over the other. It's very interesting. So, um, sacred mirroring. To me, that's a great deal of what this is about, is sacred mirroring. This person could be helping to bring up dormant trauma from your childhood that you experienced in one of your parents. Dynamics of power. There's a lot of Pluto energy with this. So I want to just invite everyone to imagine the 1111, or 11, and seeing the two columns, right? So each column being the individual, and they're going ping 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 ping, mirroring, reflecting, for better or worse, conscious or unconscious. And what I've observed is, when we look at life and our experiences, an accumulation of knowledge, wisdom, self-awareness, which is light, our light quotient increasing, those that we meet on the journey may shift in what they're here to show us, and the lessons, if you will, or the activations become more evolved. So, for instance, it's not so much learning about yourself um on a financial level, maybe, or a sexual level, just these initial, like, things we do with other humans in the initial phases of partnership, like showing you compassion, showing you patience and wisdom. And this is where, it expands. Like, Annette is keeping us on topic today. We're only going to focus on romantic, but you got to look at like all the relationships, all the mirrors or aspects, all the souls you cross on the path, strangers. Everyone has something for you. It's a way of perceiving your reality. Everyone has gifts for one another, and the amount of work we can do, the depth that we can go with one another, you can really start to feel when it's no longer aligned, like you have nothing in common, or you have different visions of what you want for your reality next, or different priorities, even, right? These different values, all of a sudden they're on a different trajectory, and then there's a split. And I think it depends. It's very individual too, like how many splits you're going to have, how many partners you're going to have, until it's you and your universe. So I would love to pass it back to you, Annette.
Um, yeah, I think it's It's interesting when you bring up it really is, it is everyone we meet. And there are just some people, and that's kind of the how you kind of know that you're feeling a different, or a different energetic connection with a person, is because you do allow them, they have kind of a get out of jail free card. And everyone will sit there and say they don't, but we all know that they do. And they have a get out of jail free card. They can do, they can do whatever kind of they want, and we treat them much differently, where if someone else did that to us, we would have a totally different reaction, um, because they mean something more. We feel like they complete us in some way, that they bring out something in us, they bring out a softer side in us, they bring out a more compassionate side. That's what you just hit on. They can bring out a more sexual side. They can also bring out a lot of uglier stuff, like the jealousy, the obsession, because we get so wrapped up in what we think the relationship is on a human level. Like a lot of times with twins, it's funny, that old adage, opposites attracts, and then someone went far farther with that and said the only thing opposites attract is trouble. Because you don't have the same thing, anything in common. You don't, you have zero in common. And every twin, romantic, like I'm gonna just keep mine kind of romantic today. Every twin I had, we have really nothing in common. So when you start to take that over, and when you get into ascension, it's not so much the human stuff like age, and none of that stuff doesn't matter. Money, it doesn't matter. Um, Looks, they don't matter. It's the frequency that starts to become prominent. And when you look at that and that doesn't match, but still you want to be with the person. So even when you start going into parts of your ascension process, you still can fall into this twin, people call it a matrix, you can call it a kind of a dark hole and an abyss that puts you in, because you are trying to make it work, trying to drag them with you through your ascension process. And they might just be there to activate you to certain parts of it. I had one person that was there pre-awakening. I had quite a few who were there pre-awakening, and then I had one right after my awakening going into my ascension. Then I had one when I was literally in my ascension process. And the last one wasn't a sexual thing, but the ones before that were. But you get to certain points where that doesn't feel right when you're in ascension and your DNA and tainting your DNA, and that's kind of a different subject. But it's still kind of transcendent all that. It's not even the sexual thing might be there, but even if you're not having sex with the person, it's still this energetic pull that's very hard to explain until you work through that. You don't have to have them in your life, and they activate what they activate. They clear what you need to clear, and eventually you get to a place where you're either going to be able to have a conscious partnership with them, or it has to go a different direction, because you can't kind of hold that frequency anymore. Because once you break through whatever they're helping you deal with, helping you find, and you're also helping them too. So it's never just a one-way thing. We always, even when we get into our ascension, we'll think, oh, we were doing all this for everybody else. They're doing stuff for us too. And you're activating them also. You might be in your ascension and they're just maybe very not even awakening yet. And you're like, how in the hell are we twins? Or how do I even feel this for this person? We're totally in a different part, but there's an energetic connection because there's something there. And it doesn't matter if they're 20 years older or none of that matters. It transcends all of those things. And we also have this feeling, because we feel that way so strongly for a while, that it's supposed to be there forever. And that's what you get into a lot of human relationships like that, where it's like forever, that it's just, you'll hear people, one soul, two bodies. I've heard that before too. All that kind of crazy stuff they talk about, and people talk about, in a sense that you can't be complete without that person, or the person's going to run and you have to chase them. I mean, it's all bullshit. That's all bullshit. It's just these relationships, it can be kind of miserable. And very few I went through. Some had some good parts, but majority of them were not great, because there were so many other things in the way of it. And when you take the parts out that were joyful, and you kind of try to look at those. I think one thing with the twins, we start trying to go too far down the road. And that's what our human does. We try to go so far down the road with, okay, if we stay together, or then what happens at this point or that point. And I think with when you start getting into recognizing they're twins, when you're human, you don't know that. You just know it's someone you feel a lot of attraction to, um, romantically. Like I said, I want to keep repeating it. We're going to focus on just the romantic ones today because they tend to be the ones that get to us the most. Everyone's a twin. Your best friend's your twin. Everyone is a twin. Your parents are twins. Everyone is. So you can take this extrapolated to everybody in your life currently. But when we're human, we don't even know it's what they are. We just say it's physical attraction. I'm physically attracted.
Thank you for being my twin, Annette.
Oh, thank you. I feel so seen. It's our physical. It's just a physical attraction when you're human. That's why I made the joke earlier. They all kind of look the same because they were physically. We put them in a package where our human's going to physically like. We're not going to put them in something or a human is not going to physically like. You might see that shift when you get in Ascension because you stop caring so much about the physical. And so your twin might start to look a little different. You can even go into astrological signs. You see this on a human level too. You always would attract the same ones. And you notice all of a sudden you're shifting and now you're attracting a different sign, a sign you never attracted before, because you're in a different frequency. You're in a different space now. So now you're attracting other people to show us something, right? You're always going to be in a state of flux, but in our human consciousness, we don't shift fast enough to even see it, right? So we kind of see ourselves as always it's a very slow turn. If you imagine a hamster wheel, it's like barely moving on the wheel. That's human consciousness. It doesn't go fast enough to really get anywhere. That's why things take 10 years to play out or decades to play out. Whereas when you're Ascension, it can play out in 6 months because we're actively running on that wheel, right? But in humans, you're still moving. You're just ticking up real slow. So you might date people in one place that are in one sign, if we even do it astrological signs, and then all of a sudden you always attract Capricorns, and all of a sudden all you're attracting are Pisces or something completely different, and that's because that's where you're at. So don't be surprised if when I kind of joke and say a lot of them look the same. In the beginning, a lot of them do look the same because our human needs to be attracted to them, and our human's going to look for certain physical things we like, right? But in Ascension, it could shift. And once you transcend the signature of that person and the signature they activated in you, you kind of kind of obliterate whatever that was trying to show you, and you're deeper inside. You get a new one. Some people might get the same one again. I always got new ones. And the funny thing to me was I never saw the old ones again. To this day, I have never seen them again, which is crazy in the day and time we live in. But my frequency would shift so fast, they just didn't exist in the frequency I was in anymore. And I never saw them again. Like, as of today. Whereas other people in our human conscious, people go back and forth and back and forth. I never saw any of them again. So I'm going to kick it back to you.
That's great. Thank you for sharing some of your personal experience here. And I love this. David's talking about the mirror, and that's totally like the whole topic of this is about the mirroring. And eventually there's a point where you don't really need a mirror anymore, or the usefulness of seeing shifts into another way, another methodology, another form of communication with yourself, because you start to just refract and see so deeply. Like, you imagine two mirrors when you put them together, how it's an infinite hall of mirrors. So eventually you have enough mirroring that's inside of you now. It's like into me see, right? Intimacy into me see, right? So I love that. And you do get to a point where you're like, yeah, if there's a person that I could learn with, cool. I don't know what it looks like I don't have any expectations. And so I want to share my own personal experiences. I think this is just so helpful because we have very different experiences, and I love it. I love seeing and learning about others' experiences. So for me, so you talk about they all were like the same kind of model template. They all look the same. For me, they could not have been more different in the external, but the pattern was the energy was the same. And I remember having this realization where I was like, holy fuck, The form is completely different, but it's the same energy here. And that was a trip to me. That taught me a lot. So then I started delving into more, programming and subconscious and like imprinting, childhood imprinting and stuff. So for me, it was Pluto 100%. I will say it was always attracted, and the person always looked, they could be completely different walks of life, different nationalities, different interests. It was like a grand experiment, like a grand galactic experiment. It was very interesting. So, and then I would see shifts in the energy where they would be more on the same path, but then there would still be a split, still be a split. And they completely disappear. I completely disappear because I go to a whole other dimensional plane. I'm out. So it is interesting. So I just wanted to share what that's interesting and common there of like, yeah, you blip out kind of into a whole other dimension. And what's funny is you could even still live in the same area, but there's never, it's very interesting. So I love some words that came through when you were sharing this last piece were about, first of all, this is a huge spiritual lesson for all of us, is impermanence. Impermanence. It just keeps coming back around. Nothing is fixed, right? Everything has this flow, this fluidity to it. And it assists us as we are expanding our awareness because the human fixates, wants things to stay the same, feels a comfort, feels a completion in this scenario versus inside. Very different. So when you have that inside, then you start to be able to trust the flow of the river, merrily, merrily, merrily down the stream, right? And the river of life, then you start to realize, oh yeah, people come in to teach and to activate me, and it's kind of like you're just going through and they're just coming and passing through. And the nature of the relationship shifts too, like you're saying, like it's not always physical, and then it leaves the physical, goes to other things, almost like wisdom teachers passing each other on the path and like sharing some fun party facts and then moving on. So impermanence in general, and I think that's one of the biggest and most profound and fabulous and fucking painful lessons and activations from the whole twin flame journey, is that of impermanence. The initial spark with the person, the initial attraction, you go to a different place inside of yourselves, your energy starts to merge, and then it turns into something else. Is it feeling great? Is it like, whoa, this got dark really quick? What's going on? How is the energy intermingling? And so the other word that came through was the enmeshed or the entanglement that happens. And then that's where the attachment, that's where the courting, that's where it's like, oh, are we learning anymore? Or are we just encoded in kind of this codependent tangle, and we're identityless and we're in this weird matrix that our energy is making, meaning that the evolutionary aspects of this particular configuration are over. But then the attachment, the clinging, the human compulsory desire to find completion outside or with or having, very interesting stuff, right? So yeah, entanglements I think is such a huge one, in the clinging, wanting things to just stay the same. And I feel like that's been such a theme, that we're seeing so much shift that, I mean, me personally, I'm watching so much shifting, and there is grief or there is some nostalgia. You're like, wow, remember those days? Damn, they're gone now. All kinds of ways of looking, So I'll pass it back to you, Annette. Thank you.
I like the way you brought when you said the energy was the same, even though yours all looked different. The energy was the same. I mean, I would say the same thing for mine, even though a lot of mine looked the same. They weren't like all identical, but they're very similar features, tall, whatever. They were similar, but the energy was always the same. But it might have been tweaked a tad bit because they weren't exactly the same. I would say it felt like everyone that came in, they came in for a while. It was almost like the three ghosts of what is it? Christmas Carol. We got the three visits from the three ghosts. I had like three in succession, and it was like 10 months apart. I always knew when they were coming in too. It was like Christmas time. I was like, I am so due. I remember that I'd be like, well, I'm gonna go out and see who's coming. I'm gonna go meet somebody because I am due. I'm overdue. It's been 10 months. It's Christmas. I'm just gonna go sit somewhere and wait for this dude to walk up. Because it's just, you just knew. Now then I would say it was probably the first one, I was married prior, but I would even say that was at a different level. In a sense, I was still, I can't even explain it. So to me, they got more intense, than my earlier ones when I was in my human consciousness. Even though the first couple ones I had and this last bunch I had was still in the first one, still in a human consciousness, but it put me toward the metaphysical road because it was so intense, and then it was completely a nightmare. It just obliterated, it just like fell apart so fast that it kind of pushed me to go toward Reiki, and a lot of these things push us toward other things, and we're looking for a reason as to why, because they can touch us so deeply. It doesn't matter if you're together for 2 weeks or 15 years, and none of that matters. And David put in the comments, and I saw, he's like, people leave the frequency and then they disappear, and we disappear to them, they disappear to us because we leave the reality they're in, and we just take ourselves out of the reality, and a lot of them are still in that same reality, and sometimes they'll leave the reality and we might still be in the reality, and we're still sitting there, and we're still kind of waiting. And when you said, the energy was similar, and I can remember when every time I would meet them, and then the energy was similar, but each one I connected with on a deeper level. Human. The second one, I was more getting to awakening, semi-conscious. The third one, I would have thought I was all the way conscious. Looking back now, I wouldn't say I was. I was probably just it's still heading out of my awakening into my ascension. And that last one pushed me into my ascension. And then I had one in my ascension process. And one of the things, when you actually can see them and identify them, is this is a twin flame relationship. And like I said, everyone is a twin. I just want to keep repeating that because I don't want anyone to leave here saying, oh my God, it's just romantic, and oh my God, we just have one. If that's all crap, we don't. But I had a friend once that said, they're in a net, you're like a muse. You meet all these people and then they leave and go on to do these great things. And you just, and I didn't notice it at the time, but you're activating them to go do something too. Like I said, this is never a one-way street. We're activating them to go do something, and they're going to go off and have their experience, and they might not be awakening for decades down the road. And when they do, they might look for us. They might go find someone else to help them through their awakening and their ascension process. It might not be us. We get so wrapped up in ourselves, we think it always has to be us. It might not be us. Chances are it probably won't be, because the frequencies will be so different by the time they get there and to where we are. That's why, I used to listen to some of that twin flame stuff. And when you're in it, that's an activation too, just to realize that's such a thing. Our human consciousness doesn't want to even see anything energetic. So just when you get to the point where you're recognizing that this is different, I'm interested in this topic, that's a huge activate for people. It's not the consciousness I'm at with the topic, but it does serve a purpose because it does activate people to something more than I just went out on a date and I really like that person or whatever. I feel so lost without that person. I'm so grieving so hard for this person. I remember that one of the last ones I had, I grieved so hard. And I remember I had someone say to me, you act like you were together for years. You were only together a couple of months. But I could see at that point, I looked back and realized I was grieving every human relationship because I wasn't going to have anymore. I was grieving the loss of all of them, because the next one I had, I was very much more deeper into my ascension process. And even though I would kind of go in and out, like he might do something and it would, I'd run around in a circle for like maybe 2 weeks. And then I get back, okay, now I'm conscious again. And we might have points in that when you're in these relationships where you kind of go unconscious and then you go conscious again. And then you might, go unconscious for 2 weeks. But then after a while, you might notice, oh, wait, I only blipped out for 2 hours. And then I got back again. I got back on track again. I was able to go conscious again, because you've learned what you need to learn, and you're starting to pull out of it. You just want them to come with you. And that's, I think, the hardest part about all relationships we have, whether they're romantic or not. We don't want to have to leave everyone behind, but in a lot of times we have to leave everybody behind, because this is not a journey we take. A lot of people come in, they activate us, and then, they leave, and we activate them and they leave, because that was how it was supposed to be. And we might not like that. And when you say that to people, people might not like that answer. But very few people stick around. And if you look at the people you had around when you started, whether you were your awakening, whether you're pre-ascension, whether you're deep into your ascension process, whether you're in your human consciousness, when you look back at different stages, I mean, who's still around? And if they are still around, how has that relationship shifted? Because I think sometimes we might not be at a place where someone can listen to the stream and go, yeah, I understand what they're saying. They're just activating me. The whole relationship itself doesn't matter in a sense. They're there to help me get something I can't get to myself. You might still be, I just want that person back, you know, but that's okay because this still opens you up to the concept. And you might want to go listen to 18 hours of how to get somebody back because you still feel like, but as you go through that 18 hours of trying to figure it out, or those months or days or you know, whatever it is, you start to lose interest in that because you're clearing it that way too. You're also clearing out some of that stuff by going through that process too, whether you're going to get your tarot cards read, whether whatever it is, giving your power away to some of that stuff at the time. Yes, but it's helping you work through the program of that. So, you know, I think it'd be interesting if anyone in the chat wants to kind of type in some twin experiences they've had. I think it's interesting because they're not all going to be the same. Like even Marissa and I have had different types of ones, you know, and different, you know, like none of mine lasted that long. But I feel like during awakening and ascension, nothing really lasts that long, except some realities feel like they last forever. When you're in some trying to build new ones, are waiting for new ones to come in or trying to construct new ones. But I'm gonna kick it back to you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, we would love all. Thank you so much to our lovely people here with us. And yeah, you're welcome to if you want to discuss anything, share anything. Um, I love what you were saying. I observed similar where, like I said, I became aware of patterns of energy that were appearing. And then I started to see, okay, well, if there's a pattern, there's a meaning, let's explore. And then the person would also be more on the path, or I would receive more, there's more reciprocity, each time. And then post ascension, there was one opportunity where I was able to really see, like, yeah, I don't relate to the human way of romantic at all. And you were talking about, disinterest. And another is like, feeling into the energy. Like, how do you feel around that person? Do you feel elevated, inspired, expanded? Do you feel deflated or tired? Like really feeling in. And what I will share is, yes, this is about the romantic and the twin flame energy. And for me, I saw that my human would invest so much energy into that desire because I am very romantic at heart, I would say, like the human, the Leo energy, Taurus energy is very romantic too. And so there is like this fantastical component. And
I
as
would
you
say Taurus is the most sensitive earth sign by far. We are just known to be the most sensitive out of all the earth signs. We're not like the typical other earth signs. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So we have had to experience the full exploration of the physical world, and you can look at all kinds of ways of segmenting this energy of like more asceticism, where you're more locked away in a cloister in your spiritual journey, right? Or you're more hedonistic. Like there's all these crossovers of what we're learning, engaging with others, and this beautiful activation that happens with merging with others. And it is very sacred. And that's the thing, wherever anyone is, wherever you're at is perfect. You could be really enjoying what you are learning, receiving, exchanging. You could be done. You could be just initiating something else. The thing is that we're here to receive and to be activated and to expand and to grow. So it's also very important if you're like, no, like, oh, there's resistance there. Like, what is there? What is there with the notion, and just surrendering to learning and to having these beautiful experiences and really seeing them for the gift that they are as we're going along. As you get galactic, it starts to get pretty interesting, pretty weird in a wonderful galactic way where you're like, oh yeah, we come together and we create a progeny and that's it. Okay, cool, we've contributed to the increase, the population, the legacy of the crystal children or the star children going forward. That was the only reason for that. We'll never do that again. Like we're moving to another phase of life. It's very interesting. And I'm almost seeing like, like the life cycles of amphibians and frogs, they've got their life cycles, the tadpole, and then they are jumping, with their long legs. And it's just an interesting part of our evolution that the roles change, how we learn and grow changes. And so for me, like, just comparing and contrasting where I am now, the amount of energy that my human would pine, and put into romantic relationships that ultimately could get to a place, and there was incredible expansion. So I want to talk about the gifts. I want to talk about the gifts for a moment. Learning about incredible, wonderful ways, like cultures, music, new ways to open up, new light technologies, new amazing, brilliant, all kinds of stuff. You learn so much getting exposed to another, right? And that's the whole point. Also, I think of this creating a constellation with someone for a little while, your universes come together and collide, and then how sustainable it is remains to be seen. But the gifts are great, on this whole process and the reciprocity, the exchange. So I wanted to make sure to talk about the gifts, absolutely. But what I began to learn more about myself when we're looking at the subtleties of the light body and our energy and our energetic investment or expenditure of what we're putting it in. Is it the highest creation now? Is it highest aligned now for me to put it in another soul and one soul, or like 5 souls, depending on your working partnerships, all these things. And you have your twin flame, and then you've got your family and all these pieces, versus putting more energy investment into new earth and your soul mission or your conscious business or healing your body. We're all very programmed to give the energy away but not give it to ourselves, especially common with women, human women form programming. But all of us do this. We're all givers. We love to give. There is pleasure in giving. Is it received? Is it reciprocal? Is it being used in, we have one YOLO, right? One life in this particular cycle. Are we, making it the greatest that it can be? Can we do that with someone else? Well, fuck yeah, that's great. Or do we want to do it with a group of people and we're more like a council, and we're investing in new earth innovations together, and one person has the skill of accounting, one person has the skill of networking, like just using examples, like let's say conscious business. So I'm putting the energy in calling in soul aligned individuals to build new earth with what we're doing. Like for instance, me and Annette being together here, like that was a wish, like, and the human me would put everything into the other person, but not new earth. So yeah, and some of us, depending on how our support systems are created, you are here to do all of that, and that's awesome. So it's just interesting, just again, looking at all of this, just dynamics of energy, what serves. Is there a greater expectation being put upon us now, an intense initiation to expand what we're here to do and share, and what our energy is meant to gestate, and to create now as a creator being, like it starts to get really big. So just want to share that when you're consciously partnered, enjoy it and honor your energy and teach one another how to honor your energy. So you have this beautiful thing together, and then you have, your own time, your own moments, your own stuff, your own reality. Because I think that's the biggest thing, is the enmeshing, And me, I have like just the way my chart is, like very much just like, oh yeah, it's, divine union. There's this enmeshing, but you don't want to lose yourself in the story, the situation, the person, the ideal, the fantasy, the Disney movie. Like there's so many layers of this, right? Where we have to discover ourselves and who we are and maintain our sovereignty and enjoy the expansion that's possible with another. So I would say the conscious twin flame aspects is wonderful and beautiful. And again, impermanence. We cling to nothing. We are not without. We are whole and complete unto ourselves. We're here to learn and grow and share and have a wonderful time. That shifts, the specifics of that. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in. So I'll give it back to you, Annette. And hi, Bucky. It's great to have you here. Thank you, David. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Marixa. Everyone, thank you.
I think when you kind of hit on it, like when you first meet someone, you kind of see their soul first, and you see all that, you feel that energetic pull. You feel that you just want to be with that person all the time, and in our human consciousness, we would call it's chemistry. It's a chemistry. That's the human word for it. And we start to understand it's the energetics when you get to ascension, and maybe part of your awakening, you start to understand that it's the energetics that's pulling you to that person. And I remember I did not want to do it two twins ago. I did not want to do it. And I remember thinking, there's so many other things I can be doing. I don't want to do this. And, but then I remember my universe was like, but you have to. Like, this is important for you to go here next. And a lot of realities we get into like that, we don't want to do that one. We want to go do this one, or I want to do that one. But no, you got to go do this one. And everything you will notice is pushing you toward that one, whether you want to do it or not. You're getting pushed toward that one. I can remember going to a restaurant, and there'd be like 2 seats. I'd be like, well, I'm just going to sit here. And then I remember going to the restroom, coming back, and my latest twin would be sitting right where I had just left. And they had set him right there. And I'm like, oh, man. And he's like, I know you were sitting there. And I was like, really? I know. Of course you are. You're going to sit right next to me. It's just we kind of feel that like we're supposed to, we're supposed to go in this direction. And we see their soul. And it takes a while and a couple more interactions. That's why they had the old adage, you have to know someone for a full year to really know the person. And it's not so much to know them, but to see all their aspects and to see which one's in charge. And when you're dealing with a human consciousness, that's the one in charge. And you start to see all the stuff that comes with the soul. They might be itty bitty bit of their soul in there. The rest of their soul's kind of outside hanging out, waiting to go in, waiting to come in, but it's not their time yet to embody. So you start to see all of the things that, in our human consciousness, we would probably see them as things that weren't compatible to us. In our ascension, we're going to look at it like, wow, these are definitely things that, do I want to live with that? Because we do take on someone else's karma when we get into relationships. And it doesn't mean, when you're talking to someone at a grocery store, you don't give a shit what choices they make. You see them at the grocery store and you say hi and you talk to them, and it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit what they're going to do. They can be the most unconscious person on earth. I can be as polite and nice and try to lighten the day as much as possible and go on with my life. It doesn't matter to me what choices those people are making. But when you're taking someone into your life and into your world, we become much more conscientious of that, because we're taking on their karma, meaning whatever they have not gone through, even if we have gone through it, we're going to go through it again with them, because we're now taking that on. And that's for a lot of reasons why you said some people just don't want to do it at all. And usually those when you have to do it. But we start to understand that, am I going to do that? Do I want to take on this karma? Do I want to take this person, everything going on with them? And especially when you're dealing with someone in their human consciousness, because a lot of times when you're in that twin flame rope, kind of that circle, they are, because that's kind of the deal, I think, in a sense. I don't know if you'd even call them twin flames if you're both ascended. They're not twins anymore. They're now conscious partners. It's an oxymoron. You can't really have a twin flame when you're ascended, because once you see you're mirroring a person, you stop doing it. That's what consciousness is. It's not to continue to say, yeah, I'm doing it, and you keep doing the shit. You see it and you stop it. That's what consciousness is. It's not recognizing it. That's, to me, more fourth dimensional. That's awakening. That's very beginning of ascension. You notice you're doing it. That's a huge thing too. Don't get me wrong. Don't not pat yourself on the back. You notice the pattern. I look back at all my twins, and my pattern was I would, kind of do whatever they wanted to do. And I would give all my power to that person to decide how the relationship was going to go and what was going to go on. And that was just the pattern I had, almost justifying why I was there and that I could be in this relationship with this person. That was the pattern I ran constantly, until you see that's the pattern. You realize it's kind of dumb. And you can even look back, and a lot of this can be rooted in stuff that happened when you were younger. Like you might have had a parent or a grandparent that liked your sibling better. And I could look back on that now and go, yeah, they might have liked them better, because they might have had more of an energetic pull to that person. It's not personal to me. It's not a personal, like they did not like me. They just felt a more energetic pull to someone else. But when we don't understand that, we take it personal. We're not good enough. When it was like, no, we just didn't have that same connection they had. We'll have that connection with someone else. It's not a personal thing, but we took it personal, that we weren't good enough. That's a story, to get back to what you said in the beginning. That's what we said. That's a story we told ourselves. That's a human story we make up. That, oh, that person liked this person better. I wasn't good enough for that person. No, they just like them better. They just had a stronger energetic connection with that person, just like I have a stronger energetic connection with this child or with this person. It's not that the other people aren't good enough. It's just not how you feel. And, we can base so much stuff and so many programs. And they would say from like 0 to 7, people say maybe you develop your personality. And you're just kind of developing some beliefs, but then you start running those belief systems through your life. And then you start doubling down on your experiences and you keep running the same things through your life after that, right? You get your beliefs developed, and then you start creating the realities to solidify them, right? After a certain age, you just start creating the reality and go, oh, I wasn't good enough. Oh, look, I wasn't good enough again. And we just keep running it around no matter where it was. But when you really kind of start to peel it back, and you get to that in Ascension where you get to the consciousness to peel it back. You can't be in a reality and peel it back when you're in the middle of it. You can't see it. You can only see it really top down. You can only get to a higher level of consciousness and look down on it and see what it was. You can look back on a reality. Even in our human consciousness, we could do that. We could look back at something 10 years ago and see it clearly for what it was. And just like you can look at someone else's reality and see every red flag in the book as to why this is a train wreck waiting to happen, but they don't see it because they're in the frequency of that reality and they don't see all the red flags. They're just waving them away. Just like we would do the same thing. When you're in it, you don't see it. And as a human, you can't see anything anyway. You can just see this much. You can't see anything. You have no vision as a human. You have no free will. You have no vision. You can't see. You don't understand. You're just creating shit to create it. You don't even know the kind of mess you're going to have to recreate later. As Marissa and I can attest to, trying to work through all the shit we created in our human life. It's not like you all of a sudden you wake up, okay, I'm done. I've undone everything I did before in this life and in every multidimensional reality. That takes a long flipping time. That's not easy. And when you're in the middle of it, how much longer do we got to go this wheel? So when you get in a person in your life and you're really thinking, do I want to take on this karma too? That's a big choice. And am I just supposed to be in this person's life for a few weeks to activate them? I'll see what's coming up for me. And then I'm going to close this out because I don't want to be in this. There are some people you might feel like you got to be in it for a certain amount of time, a certain of something they're going to go through, and other people you might just activate them and then get out, because it doesn't serve a purpose to stay, and without a purpose in Ascension, there is no reality. That's why I think a lot of us move away from the romantic relationships in general. They are human. We don't feel the requirement for them. And there isn't a purpose in them. It's hard to find the purpose if the purpose is just to have another person in your life. That is not a strong enough purpose in Ascension to share reality with a person. I'm going to kick it back to you.
So good. So good. Thank you, Annette. We got some awesome comments here, and I love this. So we have a lovely commenter with an Aries Venus. I subconsciously sabotage relationships because of my addiction to the chase. Now that I'm aware of this tendency, I am realizing I need to chase myself. And I love that realization for you and that's the whole point of the learning. And that's why it's like, can we really beat ourselves up for the whole process? Because we're learning, and what a gift, to see the mirroring, to see the patterning, however we are being shown. Because when you see, you are free. And I could think of nothing better than to be a devotee of love and to become a devotee to finding the love in yourself, and chasing yourself, discovering yourself. And that's the sacred marriage. That's the divine union within. So I absolutely love that. I'd love to hear that. And it's very helpful for all of us, because we want to learn, we want to grow, and we want to not lose ourselves in the other, which can happen if you're a devotee of love and you're here to serve and you're a selfless servant. Then everyone in your reality gets that treatment, and you start to observe like, oh wow, humans can't handle this. Humans can't handle this. It's very interesting. You start to see some pretty dark shit when you go through this, where if you have pure love to give, not everyone can handle it. Not everyone can trust it. Not everyone can feel safe with it. People have a lot of healing to do, opening their hearts. So it can be very interesting looking at just like transpersonal psychology, all of it. Again, is like, okay, now we're at an impasse. There's only so far we can go, because this person will, in their consciousness, just their unconsciousness, it's not personal, it's not a judgment, their unconsciousness doesn't know what to do with this, and it twists it rather than open their heart and embrace and do something constructive, building, creative with the energy, because the whole point is to throw our energy together into a cauldron and collaborate, co-create. There's so many different layers of that happening, but like what me and Annette are doing now, this beautiful collaboration, our energies are merging and melding, and they're creating a third thing, third creation, which is this conversation. And so that's for me where it started to shift. It started to get dark. I was still working through, learning from it all, utilizing it all as an amazing mirror, even deeper. And then that's where it actually took me into some deep, dark galactic shit. So then we start to see, oh my goodness. So now as we're clearing the galactic core, where the sexual relating is still part of the process, part of the healing, part of the integrating, part of the learning and exploring. You go into galactic core, clearing your galactic core, deep root stuff. And you're actually observing that what you are mirroring, what you are reenacting is a mirror of a parallel reality that's part of collectives and experiences going on between different galactic races. It starts to get really trippy. So those are some of the deeper elements for me. I guess you could say like the 4D, and then taking that into the 5D and seeing and being able to see clearly and navigate. And just like what you said, Annette, what karma is appropriate. Well, sometimes we come together and you're horrified by the karma that is that third byproduct, that co-creative thing. You're horrified. You didn't know. There was the attraction, and it was part of the unlocking, right? And so then there's that incredible lesson, incredible expansion, and then the moving on. So for me, it's just been a rapid acceleration of learning, and you feel your way through, what resonates. And in the meantime, you're establishing an even deeper relationship or commitment or partnership with yourself, with your soul. A very simplified expression, and you really know and you feel stable and in yourself. And whether you're meant to continue with another, cool. I know we're focusing on romantic, but for me, just to be, transparent in my reality, it's all platonic and it's all building new earth. It's like conscious business. If you want to try to term it, we're all building, we're all working, we're all way showers. We're here, we're putting together, building libraries of information. Like that is the birthing, that is the kind of tantric energetic alchemy that's happening, this co-creation. That's now how the energy works for me. And yeah, it's very interesting. So anyways, I just want to throw that out there. Thank you, Annette.
I think that's interesting because it's the same for me now. My energy goes toward the creating realities, and when you're always there's a point in your process where you're probably the one going through ascension in your reality, and like your people surrounding you. You might have people online, like Marissa and I connect online, and other groups you might connect with, but in your day-to-day life, you might be the only one there that is anchoring in a new reality. And when we start to anchor in a new reality, that means you're doing the work to anchor it in. And I know this year I have been exhausted by anchoring in realities. It's been one right after the other. I've been trying to get a lot of physical things anchored in this year, which means we're doing the physical work to anchor them in, whether that's replanting the yard or whatever it is for you, painting the house. We're usually the ones doing that because we're the ones that can see it, and we're the ones that care about it being done at all. Humans don't care about new realities. They just will keep living out the old ones so they fall apart. There's a difference between anchoring in a reality and bearing the weight of one. And those are two very different types of humans bear the weight of realities, and they'll continue to carry the weight of a reality till it breaks down around them. In your ascension, you start to see it breaking down. You might see years ahead it's going to break down. you can start to see the signs it's breaking apart. And then you have to start bringing in a new one. But when you're the one that can see that, you're the one that's doing it all. So, and the same thing when you get into the twins, like, even though a lot of people hear that term, they think romantic, they click on it, that's what they want to hear, right? It is technically everyone in your life is showing you something. When they cease to show you something, then you're shifting out of that. And either two things, one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to shift to show you a different aspect, one that you also have, or they're leaving. That's it. Or you're leaving, because they can't hold anymore because you now transcended that aspect. And that's what happens with the twins. Either you shift out of that twin, you stop the behavior. Either everyone gets to a point where they're just so exhausted, they've gotten to the bottom, they have nothing else left to put any more energy into the behavior anymore. And if that's what happens, then it's going to shift out. That person's going to go away, and you might get a respite for a while, and you might get someone else in. Like Marissa said, the same energy. We're going to tee it all up again because we're not done with it yet, And that's why a lot of you start to see the pattern, because it's not that you're repeating it, you're just deeper within the pattern. You get through a certain amount of it, and you might have worked through some of that program by busting through, doing all the reality. You're busting through it. You're having all these experiences with your twin. You're going through the good and the not so great, and you're busting through, clearing that program through those experiences. It's a harder way to do it, but as humans and in certain parts of Ascension, that's how we would do it. And awakening, that's how you would clear a program. You would just go through the reality and clear it that way. It's longer, it's harder because you have to experience the reality. Whereas when you get to certain places in Ascension, you can see it, you can clear it energetically, and you can start to see, like, I think it was CH, I want to think, when they said it became that I realized the pattern, and I would even say, you don't even need to chase yourself. You just need to love yourself and realize you don't need to chase anything. That's it. But that's sometimes easier said than done. And that can take reprogramming to do that, to realize that we don't have to do that. Our human is always chasing something. It's like a cat. It's always chasing something because it's not fulfilled. It's too empty inside. It's always looking for something else. But when we really start to break down, why we construct reality, why we bring in the twins, you just start to understand that they're there. It is a very profound relationship. And, even though technically old twins aren't twins anymore, and your new twin might be, the person you learn to put on a pedestal, and then you stop doing that because you can't, in Ascension, you learn you can't treat anybody above anybody else. So you have to learn that lesson. And sometimes you might be the one putting them on a pedestal, but they're not putting you on a pedestal. And you're treating them better than they're treating you. And you have to learn not to do that. And they show us a lot. And whether we go through that, we go through those physical realities, reality by reality, and we go through all that to bust through the programming, or we see the programming and try to work through it energetically. We still might have to work through some realities. We have to learn to close realities out in its highest place. We might not be able to do that. We might just leave the keys in the door and leave. Now, technically, we didn't close it out. It ended. But our universe will say, okay, we'll tee it up again. We'll give you another opportunity at a different frequency to try this again. Can you close this one out? And that's why we get test reality. So we're able to do that, and you might have to stand up for yourself, with, the lady in front of you in Food Lion. And if you can't stand up for yourself with the lady in front of you at Food Lion that you don't know, you're not going to stand up for yourself in front of your twin, whether it's your mother or it's a romantic partner. It doesn't matter, because we learn to do it in situations where we don't have as Marissa said earlier, the entanglement. Technically, yes, they are a twin. They're in front of us. Technically, yes, but we don't have a story with them. We can stand up for ourselves, but because we don't have the reason why we can't. We don't have a loss of, if they get mad, they'll leave. Whereas when we get into the twins and people we are entangled with, if you just even want to strip the twin down and say we're just entangled with them, then when we're entangled with them, then we have all this story that we can't live without them. And if they leave, what happens? Or if we're financially dependent on them, or, whether it doesn't even matter how you've created the reality, you have created it. And now it is, can you live in it? Or is it just, you can't? And you can't go back to the other reality because that one just sunk and you can't board a sinking ship. So that one's gone. So what do we do? And that really gets into, can we stop the cycle this time? It's almost like, the old ad, the cycle of, the abusive cycle. We're just being abusive to ourselves. When can we close out the reality? Can we look at the partner and say, whether no matter who it is to you, and say, this is not okay, or we need to shift this? And most of the time, they might not want to shift it, and that's when we close it out. Doesn't mean closing out reality. Doesn't mean anyone's going to like you. They might not like you. They might not understand, but we have to learn to do that. We have to learn to speak up for ourselves. A lot of, to me, and Marissa, I'm going to hand it back over to you. A lot of ascension is really just learning to speak up for yourself and value yourself more than what you're given. And as a human, we don't do that. We don't do that in anything. We don't value ourselves more. And even if you can say you're at the flip where people overvalue themselves, they still don't really value themselves. They're just trying to convince other people they do, right? Humans see no value in themselves. And that's what leads to everything we're talking about. In every one Marissa and I have created together, you know, if you even want to call it, we give birth to these in a sense. We bring our energy together and we give birth to these. And that's what we do. We give birth to realities. And some realities you might have birthed, you're like, oh, this is kind of a mess. And most of our human ones are a mess. It's a red hot mess. And you have to try to clear all those realities up. And then you have to try to start a new one. But might not know how to do that yet. That's why for a while we don't start anything, because we don't know how to. You don't know how to align anything on its highest because you've never done it before. Technically, that's not true because you've done it in different consciousness and in different realities and multidimensional. But in the consciousness you're in this moment, you don't remember how to do that. That's why we construct it like a Lego set and then take it apart and reconstruct it again.
I love that. Thank you so much. So awesome. And I think you've brought us circle around, in a wonderful way here, because we want to look at the karma we're creating. Karma means action. So we attribute the energy, we assign the energy, the quality, we agree with or decline, these qualities. So when you're talking about everything just now, it's like, okay, so, the karma that we are creating with the other person, is it creative, and high functioning or high consciousness, where we can merge our energy and build and be master builders together. And that's really great. And that comes through in so many different ways, right? When we couple our energy, or they say when two or more gather, we sync up our swatches, we connect our light bodies and create. So there's this karmic, there's what is the action that is happening here? What is the intention of this whole whirlpool of energetics? And then the other piece is about love, that this whole process and why the twin flame process is so sacred and special and unique. And it deserves to be treated as such and to be revered as such. And so my point is, I've talked with some cynicism about how far astray, we can be or experience with our egos and with materialism and products, and the feeling of incomplete and the desire for completion, and being fed these ideas. So all of that aside, that's the extreme of it, right? So we'll just bring it back to the pure, like, what's the point of the whole thing? Is love, to learn about love, to learn about what love is. And I keep bringing up Pluto a lot because Pluto is our subconscious, our sphere inside of pure power. And it's a very powerful force. And it's part of the attraction, the magnetism that attracts us, different situations and people, and these twin flame partnerships, relationships. And then we are evolving our own self within the partnership and our own value and power. We're learning about power dynamics. Do we just say yes and do whatever, or do we make it 50-50? How are we navigating this? How are we negotiating our energy here? And the word boundaries, and I want to expand what the word boundaries really means to me now from the expanded way of looking at it. It's not about protecting yourself. It's nothing like that. It's what is the kind of commandment, your laws of your land in your universe, of how you will feel loved, and what is love to you, and how do you give it to yourself, and how do you define it. So for instance, a great boundary or a great form of self-love is what you're willing and not willing to do, right? Like, I'm not willing to compromise myself. That is loving to me. So, it starts to get really interesting where we're learning about the intricacies of this mirroring with the other and learning and doing our best to activate and teach each other about love, about unconditional love, transcendental, like all of this, right? We're evolving versus the initial, which is possessiveness, or again, that kind of entanglement, the codependent stuff, right? And so it's all interesting, it's all amazing, and it's fun to look at your synastry. If any of you out there do like astrology or want to work with astrology, put your chart with someone. I do it with everyone that I meet, everyone that I work with. It's really fun because you can see, oh, what gifts do we have for each other? What do you have in your basket? What are you bringing to the party? Oh, I've got this. You can see all of it. You can see the nature of it. You can see a lot of information that assists you to have an expanded awareness so that we can kind of soften expectation, or clinging, or anything that seeks unconsciously to try to control, or yeah, basically control or dictate how the energy is going to go, and all of this is Pluto related. So today that we're meeting, it's Sun square Pluto. So everyone is having these experiences of looking at the contrast and the different layers of conscious and unconscious comparisons of our soul and our soul identity with desire, with that magnetism, with that push pull. So everything is elevating now. Everything is expanding and ascending our concepts of what this means in our life and in our reality. And so it's fun to play with this whole concept of the twin flames and expanding it, with the emotional, the romantical, the sexual, how important all of that is for our self development, and it will go the way it's supposed to go, and then just know that it's really fun because as your light quotient grows, your love for yourself grows. You start to pull in even more incredible love in your reality through things like partnerships and collaboration that expand more into the platonic and into the new earth builders and your new earth collective soul tribe and different galactic tribes that you're, sharing these genetic lines or lineages with, or monad with, and so when Annette says everyone's your twin flame, we're like, yeah, it keeps expanding. I think that's a nice way to like wrap it up. But both of us are available. Also, if you guys want serious one-on-one, like assisting you to dissect and expand and go into it with our one-on-one work. So, you can reach out to either of us if you want to go deeper into becoming your own twin flame you have. I mean, why not? It's Taurus season, this is a beautiful time, this Taurus energy. So happy birthday. Happy solar returns, but this Taurus energy is bringing our heaven down on earth. So whatever your situation, whatever your current trajectory is, how do we divinitize it? How do we add more? How do we expand in our love for self and the other, and like teach and learn and grow and all of this? And thank you so much, Chrissy, for happy Taurus season. And thank you, Fatima and Colette, also for being here with us. We appreciate you all. And I know we're getting close to our time. So is there anything else I always want to let you say something before we just, hang up.
It's funny. A couple of things you said that sparked some stuff, so I typed them. I had the computer here, so I'm like, I just want to mention them. Um, one of the things you hit on was that the twin flame, and in every experience, everyone in your life comes in for love, and it either activates a love within us we didn't know was there. Children will do that. They activate a love we didn't even realize we had. And if you never feel that, even with the twins, when you've never felt that love or that feeling, you don't know what that is. And it activates, even though it's activating what's already inside of us. That's the part we don't understand. We think we link it to the person, you know, we link that feeling to the person. I have to have this person to have that feeling. But it's not about the person. The person just unlocks the feeling for us. And they also help us clear what's not love. So they're either going to be in one camp or the other, or they're probably going to fall into some camps one time and some camps other times. They're either going to help us clear what's not love, the obsession, the jealousy, the anger, all still inside of us. And they help us get to that, to clear it, right? And then you also have where they're going to activate that love within you, where once they activate that, then technically they don't have the purpose anymore because they've shown that to you and they know you have that inside of you. and they don't need to be there anymore. And if they are, that's great. And it's a bonus, that they're still there, but they don't have to be. And nothing has to be. And there's one other thing I wanted to say, and then I'll kick it back to you to close this out. Anytime we think we can't live without it, get ready, because your universe will take it away. I don't care who it is. I don't care what it is. If you think you have to have that, whatever that external thing is, get ready, because it will eventually have to go to show you don't have to have it. Whether it's a person or a thing or a house or an identity or a job, whatever it is for you. If you think that what makes you important or special, then it will get removed. And a lot of times the twins come in to just show us how special we are. And whether we feel like that in the moment, we will look back. I don't make a lot of guarantees, but I guarantee you can look back later. Like I said, you're always going to be at a higher frequency later, and you're going to be looking back down at it when you create a reality at a different frequency, and you can see the whole thing because you're looking at it, from an aerial view. We felt special. That's what they unlock a lot of times too, is they make us feel special. And as humans, we don't feel that way. We feel important, even if it's just for a little while. And then the relationship shifts and changes because we get into deeper stuff, and they help us clear the stuff that we don't even know was there, and it's kind of icky, and we don't even want to admit it was there. But they do serve an important part, and they are so pivotal to our journey. And everyone's going to have one. You might not ever have romantic ones. You might just have had some that were bosses or friends or parents or whatever. But it is just so pivotal to everybody's journey so, I don't want anyone to leave this and go, no, I'm not a twin. You can only do that after you've been through them and then be like, no, never again. But when you're at a certain frequency, you won't call them in again. You're just going to call in partners that are going to work in a sense with the frequency. And that still might not be forever, but they're going to be a mesh for what you're going to be creating right now. So I'm going to sign off, and I will kick it back to you.
Yay, thank you so much, Annette, and thank you everyone so much. And just enjoy wherever you are, and enjoy, and bring your magnifying glass sight out to expand, to see the beauty of where you are, whatever it is. We're not defined by anything, just enjoy what is, and ask what is here for me, and what can I learn, what can I share, what can I bring, what can I grow, what do I not want to see. And Annette brought up the most important point with these energetics right now. With the sun square Pluto will remove anything that you're giving your power or identity to that's not you. It will. And it's important to know that, and to not fear that, and to understand and remember everything's happening for us, right? Yeah, fraternal twins versus identical twins. Yeah, I love that. Parallel reality dimensional twins, um so yeah, it's really just about making the most of our evolutionary process and the gifts that are present with everything and every encounter and every relationship. And a fun thing to close out with, just like another one of those fun, like, oh, this will really cook our noodle, is for me, doing astrology charts. Everyone you've been around, everyone you've crossed paths with, you've traveled with them already. Literally. And that's why we say everyone's your twin flame, and there's different degrees of the significance and the specifics and the contracts, all this stuff coming in to assist an expedited evolutionary process, but it's actually quite astounding and true. Like, literally, you look at the charts, the synastry charts in astrology, evolutionary astrology, everyone's traveled together. That's why we're all together now. And so, a wonderful concept is evolving the energy of the relationship, even if the status or the specifics of the relationship change. What's interesting to observe and just see what's highest aligned is, how do we evolve the relationship, if at all, right? Or you just blip out, depending on it. So anyway, thank you for joining us. I hope this was fun and expansive, and there's no wrong way. It's all the right way. It's all the right way. You'll know when you're done. You'll know when it's not aligned anymore. And then whatever, just let the next thing come in, So it's really important. Like, we don't do hierarchies here. We don't do any of that. It's just where you are is perfect. And let us bring as much awareness, consciousness, love, presence, self-love into the scenario as we can possibly remember to do in every moment, you know? So yeah, so thank you so much, Annette. It's great to be together again. So such a treat. And just want to wish you all an amazing week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.